question is that this bill will be now read a second time, and the member for Fisher has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And the motion that's just passed the House is emblematic of this government's approach to a lack of scrutiny. That same lack of scrutiny that we saw in this House in relation to the Freedom of Information Bill, where the government did not want that debate to be held in this chamber and moved it off to the Federation Chamber. The same sort of lack of transparency that this government is becoming renowned for. And of course, I am referring in relation to other bills like the fact that this government refuses to debate the Crimes Act.
The member for Fisher, we're not talking about the general debate. So we're on the bill now. So you've given the call about the second reading on the Environment Protection Reform Bill. So
well, I am going to get to the substantive matters, Mr Speaker. I'm only a minute and 10 seconds into my speech.
I know,
but I mean, it goes to the point that this government continues.
Just pause, resume your seat. I'm just saying, if you're going to give a general debate, make it relative to the bill. Don't just go and talk about other bills or other topics or other things. Just be nuanced and make it relevant to the bill, not just a general slash and burn on a whole range of topics. So just make your comments relative to the bill and you'll be fine within the standing orders.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Australians, by their very nature, want to protect the environment. I think almost everybody in this place would agree. But what we've seen over the last particularly 15, 20 years is that the current bill, the current law, the EPBC Act, is deficient in many respects. Now, these bills before the House, and I was being specifically relevant to these bills before the House. These bills, all 7 of them, effectively what this government is seeking to do is truncate debate on all of these 7 bills, because this government wants to shut down debate. It doesn't want to see its legislative agenda being scrutinised a moment longer than it possibly has to. And that's why this government continues to play procedural games and to shut the opposition down at the first opportunity, despite them consistently having opposed that sort of stuff when they were in opposition. Now, the coalition government introduced legislation when the current leader of the opposition, when she was the Minister for the Environment, she commissioned Professor Graham Samuel to undertake a review of the EPBC Act. The coalition government introduced legislation to undertake reforms, including streamlining pathways, but that was blocked by Labor at the time. But true to form, it's now putting this sort of stuff back into this bill. Now, when Minister Plibersek when she was the Environment Minister, tried to introduce reforms in the last parliament, however, they were too left-wing for Labor. They were too left-wing for Labor, which is why the Western Australian Premier stepped in, contacted the Prime Minister, and just like that, overnight, the bills were stopped. Labor have promised at 2 elections to deliver an environmental protection agency, and after 4 years, they have not been able to deliver on that promise. Labor have now introduced proposed reforms in the chamber. However, in trying to ram it through, the bills have already been sent to a Senate inquiry, reporting back on the 24th of March 2026. Now, I know that the people in the gallery right now, and anybody who might be watching or listening to this transmission, would be wondering, well, hang on a minute, these bills, all 7 of them, have been referred to a Senate inquiry. Why are we talking about them now on the floor of the House of Representatives? And that would be a pretty reasonable question to ask, because the whole idea of the Senate inquiry is to look in detail about the merits of these bills, specifically drilling down into detail on their provisions. And yet, here we are. Here we are today, early November. The Senate inquiry bill is not due to come back until the 26th of March 2026. How can it be that this chamber can have a meaningful debate without the scrutiny of these bills? How can that be? If anybody can explain that to me, I'm all ears. But this is emblematic of the way that this government operates. It's ram legislation through at any cost, and we've seen that. We've seen it in national security legislation that I've had the carriage of just in the last couple of weeks. Ram it through, don't worry about it. The fact that there is a Senate inquiry on foot that hasn't even released a report, don't worry about that. Let's just get the bill through. That is what Australians are dealing with an arrogant government with a supermajority. That's what happens when a government gets a supermajority and it believes that it is beyond reproach. It believes that it is beyond accountability by the Australian people. Now, the coalition respects the outcome of the election, but with the outcome of the election, what we are seeing is this government is increasingly, day in and day out, ramming through legislation in this place without proper scrutiny, without giving the coalition the opportunity to be heard, without giving the coalition the opportunity to properly scrutinise what is, in effect, 1,500 pages of legislation and explanatory memoranda. 1,500 pages. This bill was alerted to the coalition last Thursday. Not 9 years ago. This bill was provided to the coalition last Thursday. 1,500 pages. 1,500 pages. Just totally disregard the fact that there is a Senate inquiry on foot at the moment. The government says, let's just ram this through. To hell with the opposition, to hell with the Australian people. Now, the minister is looking to do a deal with either the coalition or the Greens in relation to these bills by calling back the bills from the Senate inquiry process to pass the legislation by the end of this year. They want this through the parliament by the end of this year. In the current form, the bills do not provide an improvement for business, and the coalition cannot support them as is. Now, the Business Council of Australia, as the key public commentator to date, has been clear, and they've said without significant changes to this bill, we risk embedding a system that's even slower, more complex, and lacking the clarity and certainty needed for investment. So, third-party stakeholders are saying that these bills are problematic. They're saying that these bills will create a whole new heap of bureaucracy, which is even worse than what we've currently got. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, I want to just stop and pause for a moment, because I want to tell a salient story about a project, a road project in my electorate in Caloundra. in the seat of Fisher. Now, this is a project that was going to be, emphasis on going to be, funded by all three tiers of government. It wasn't a big road project like some of the projects that we get involved with at a federal level. It was a relatively modest project. If I remember correctly, it was certainly under $100 million, which for a road project is a modest project from the federal perspective at least. Now, when we were in government, we committed funds for this road project. It wasn't a lot of money. If I remember correctly, it was about $7 million. The rest was going to be paid for by the state government, the Queensland state government and the local government. Now, everything was going along quite well until we lost the election in 2022, and then the infrastructure minister decided to do her infrastructure review, and guess what, Mr Deputy Speaker? She cut the funding for this road project, which would have provided an alternative access into Caloundra, an alternative access which was greatly needed by the people of the Sunshine Coast, because that area around Caloundra, around the corner of Caloundra Road and Nicklin Way, is a car park at the best of times. So this project would have given an alternative road into Caloundra. It would have been great. Unfortunately, the infrastructure minister pulled the $7 million from federal funding, which meant that the state and local governments had to foot the bill for the balance. And they did. They do. They are. That's what they're going to do. But unfortunately, some genius in the Sunshine Coast Council referred the project to the federal Environment Minister under the EPBC Act. Now, this was around about 3 years ago now, 2 years ago maybe, and that's where it's gone to die. That project is now stalled under the current EPBC Act because it has literally stalled within the Federal Department of the Environment. Okay. And it's interesting to hear the Business Council of Australia say that these bills will create a legislative environment which will be even worse than that which we currently have. Today, it's 5 to 4 at home. There'll be people, mums and dads, picking up kids from school. It's called no daylight savings to those opposite. For those of you who don't know, Queensland doesn't have daylight savings. But 5 to 4 back home, and there'll be mums and dads picking up kids from school, and they will be in gridlocked traffic on Caloundra Road and Nicklin Way. And my message to them is this: if you think that things are bad now because of the traffic on the Sunshine Coast under the current EPBC laws, the BCA, Business Council of Australia, is saying that if these bills are passed, it's only going to get worse. The times for approvals are only going to get worse. So as the Sunshine Coast moves to 2032 and being one of the major host cities of the 2032 Olympic Games, the Sunshine Coast is grinding to a halt because of the amount of people who are moving there, and you will have, Sunshine Coast locals will have this Labor government to blame because of their incessant desire to drag things down with more red and green tape. And for what? What will be the appreciable benefits? Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, the Coalition says that there will need to be substantial amendments in relation to these bills. The deep concern is that the bills are more pro-green than they are pro-industry. There is enough here for Labor to do a deal with the Greens, and that should worry every Australian. These bills will put an unacceptable handbrake on the Australian economy. Now, The government's pretty good at doing that already, but these bills will only amplify the problem which we are currently experiencing.
Authorised by Andrew Wallace, LNP, Boccarina, Queensland.